Well, good evening, and we are going to be picking up where we left off last time in chapter 24 on the second aorist active and passive, second aorist passive and future passive. I believe we got to roughly around 24:12. Is that what you remember? I think we're about ready to start first future passive in 24:13.
Sure. And the only question I had is, so if he says first future passive, are we given a different future passive?
Yes, we're going to have a second future passive as well, which is on the next page. The only difference between that, it's kind of similar to first and second aorist. They are different forms, but identical function as far as.
Okay, so is this thing here then deficient? Because it doesn't give us that.
Well, perhaps it doesn't. There are very few second future verbs or verbs that use a second future passive.
Okay.
So it probably didn't have enough space on that summary sheet there to put it all in there. So they probably only covered the first future passive. All right. Well, picking up at 24:13, the translation of the future passive. It's translated with the undefined aspect, which is, remember, I'm not using the word perfective, rather I'm using the word undefined. It's almost always referring to a future event. I will be past is an example in English.
Right, and if I think about that statement, I can't think of any other way I could make a passive statement in the future in the English that would be with that verb.
Right, but
Okay.
what he's saying, it's almost always referring to a future. There are probably sometimes, I don't know what they are, that it doesn't get translated as a future, but rather a different tense.
Almost always referring to a future event.
As we get into the exercises, we might encounter something like that. I don't remember seeing it, but when he says almost always, that he's got something in mind, I believe, where there's an exception.
That's perhaps then
Yeah.
I said, if it's like that, would it have to be something that could be in the present or could be in the future?
I think that's what he's, yeah. I think he's referring to something that, you know how we sometimes translate the present tense as a past, the historic present, we call it.
Right.
Or we sometimes.
Well, I mean, you might say, I'm going to the store. That might mean I'm on my way out the door to the store. It might mean, sometime today I'm going to the store.
Okay, yeah, perhaps that's what he's thinking of. Okay, but let's look at the form. He's got this gray section here, which is an overview. He splits up the different parts of it. You've got the stem, the aorist passive tense stem. For luo, it's going to be the same stem for every tense. So that's lu, and then the tense formative for the future passive is theta, eta, sigma. And remember, in the second aorist, it's not theta, eta, sigma, it's simply eta, sigma. Am I saying that? Well, okay,
I'm not tracking well.
Okay.
The second aorist, what tense?
Second.
I'm sorry if this is future.
Ignore what I just said.
No. He says this here, but it's confusing because.
Well, you remember the second aorist passive
The
and
aorist passive.
Yes. The first and second, both the first and second aorist passive will use the same tense formative as the first future passive. That's the sixth column. Do you remember that?
I'm sorry, I'm looking at the statement, aorist passive tense stem, but without the augment.
Okay, an augment indicates
it's a-
past time.
Right, I'm seeing that what the augment is.
Well, you won't
Okay,
have
so
it
it's the
in the
same
future.
stem, right, it's the same stem as the aorist without the augment.
Okay, if you want to
It's
compare,
okay, is it really different than the present stem? I mean, it might be.
the stem is not different, but the
Well-
augment is only,
No, I understand. It's just, it's all right. Never mind. Some verbs, I'm just trying to track this. Some verbs have a form with an aorist stem that's not, in the present tense stem is not the same. Am I saying that, is that wrong? Stem versus root. The
Oh, yeah.
stem in the present
would be
may
the
not
se-
be the same as the stem.
you're
for the
right, you
aorist.
are thinking
That's what
correctly.
he's telling us, right?
Okay, the second aorist uses a different root than the first aorist. Remember lambano
Yeah.
and lob?
Okay, yeah, well, we're not there yet, but I'm just saying why he says that to us is these things will, if it's a verb that has these, the future passive stem will be the same as the aorist passive stem, well, the aorist stem. But how is it?
No, not stem.
Well, that's what he said.
Okay, there's two different things. Stem is one thing, but we're not talking about stem when we talk about the tense
Oh,
form.
okay, I thought you talked about the stem here. Where are you reading?
I'm not reading this. I'm
Oh.
just telling you this. Do you remember? Let me get the book.
Yeah, that's okay, the formatives.
Where did I put my- Oh, it's right here.
That's fine.
Let's shift gears for a second. Go to the appendix. The back of the book, the gray section. Page 450. This is something that you need to be familiar with, and this is kind of a summary of all the tenses that we have been and will be studying. Tense forms.
It's a list of all the verbs, is it not?
Yes, it's a list of all the
Okay.
verbs that occur 50 times or more in the New Testament. But in addition to that, you've got 6 columns here. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
The first column is present tense and also imperfect, because imperfect is based on the present tense. But it doesn't show a separate column for imperfect. You just have to know that. Then the second column is future active and middle. And the tense formative for future active middle is a sigma. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Now, tense formative is not the same thing as tense form. That might be where some of the confusion lies.
I never used that word. I was just reading.
Well,
from
he's
the
been using it
sentence.
all along. Tense formative is, for the
No,
future tense, is
It's
sigma.
it's all right. I was just reading directly out of his book, this statement. The aorist passive tense stem is the same as the future passive. It says the
Show me
future
where-
passive is formed from the aorist passive tense stem, but without the augment. That's, I just read that statement.
Okay, I hadn't got to that
I'm
yet,
sorry. Okay,
but
that's all. I'm sorry.
yes. And okay, let's take that statement that he made there that you just read.
Yeah, I think I
The
understand.
future passive and the second aorist passive use the same tense stem.
Right.
It also, you can also say it uses the same tense form, not formative, but tense form, which is in the appendix there, the sixth column. That's not talking about tense stems, though. It's talking about the tense form.
Okay, I'm sorry, I don't remember him using the word form. He talks about.
Well, he does right here. See the heading? Here, tense forms of verbs occurring 50 times or more.
Well, that means that the
We-
whole thing conglomerate right together, and he doesn't list the passive form in there, does he? So
Yes,
where is that one?
I wish he had put the sixth column.
Which,
I can't read your writing, but aorist
most
passive,
of which are empty.
well, that may be, but that's because they don't occur in that tense for that verb. But
Okay,
the tense form is the same for aorist passive and future passive using the sixth column.
all right.
But the
I'm
tense
trying to-
formative,
You're saying the form, the whole thing is the same. So so let's pick one on one of those following things, if I see what you're saying, because you're saying the actual form of the verb, you can't tell whether it was future passive or aorist passive.
yes, you can,
Okay, then.
because
I
of
don't
the
understand what
presence
you
or
just said.
absence of the augment.
Oh, then it's not the same form.
Right.
Then it's not the same form. It is a different looking thing. The way he uses that table, this is why this is confusing. The way he uses that table, he would not list, then they're not the same form. If the form means the whole thing, then it's not the same form.
The
Okay,
endings will be,
everything but yes.
well,
Okay.
all right,
Everything
I can
but-
see I'm confusing the issue here,
Yeah.
so.
It sounds,
I
if I'm
think it
understanding this right, what he's saying is that the future passive is going to look like the aorist passive, but it won't be missing the augment,
True,
Yes,
yes,
that's what
right?
you're saying.
That's exactly.
but
what
that's
he's
not the only thing
Yeah.
that is different. It has a different tense formative than the aorist passive. See,
Then how's the form the same? This is very confusing now.
it's, that term, tense formative, is a group of letters embedded within.
Right. I'm sorry, Carl. I'm following what he's saying, but it's all right. You said the forms are the same, but I'm like, but that's plainly not true. Because if we take one where they are both there, such as on page 451, if I can say this, Pastello. And then we look at the
The sixth
sixth column, and you want to compare it to the. You want to compare
apostolate.
it to the what column? I don't
This-
know. Aorist.
Yeah, he's only
Passive is
listing,
not even listed,
Uh,
but the,
yes, the sixth one under
that,
for the
that,
verb apostello is apostolane. And that is a second aorist passive. He does not show the future aorist passive or future passive because there's no room for it, but they're based on the same stem.
yes, but their actual form is different. The
Okay,
actual form is not identical.
okay,
I think that's.
all
what was
right,
confusing. Okay,
I can see why you're saying that. Okay, now look back at this gray section under
Okay.
2414.
Right.
It's got the tense formative. I'm sorry. Starting with the unaugmented aorist passive tense stem, which in the case of luo is lu. Then the second element is a tense formative, theta, eta, sigma. That's for the first future passive tense. And then the connecting vowel, either omicron or epsilon, and then the primary middle / passive personal ending, my. Luthesomai.
right.
Okay, then he makes a statement after that. The future passive is formed from the aorist passive tense stem, which is the lieu, but without the augment. If it were an aorist passive, it would be eleuthes. Well, look back 2 pages.
Well, okay, but the stem doesn't have the augment. The statements
True.
all get very confusing.
Yeah,
Because the stem doesn't have the augment.
yeah,
The point of this statement, I think, is because, well, in the case of luo, it's the same stem throughout. But there
Yes.
are verbs where the stem is different
That's
for
right.
some of these tenses,
Mhm.
and he's cluing us in that it will be the same stem for those verbs that have different stems
okay.
as its first aorist. right?
Why don't you compare 24.4 with 24.14? I think this will help. 24.4 shows us the first aorist passive. It's got an augment, it's
Yep.
got the same stem, it's got a different tense formative, theta
Mhm.
eta,
Mhm.
instead of theta eta sigma. And then it's got different endings too,
Right.
secondary active
Right,
rather than primary middle / passive.
yes,
endings. Okay, so they're similar, and they're both formed from the 6th column in that chart in the appendix.
okay.
All right, now he's got the full paradigm for that first future passive indicative, luthesami, luthese, luthesetai, and so forth. These are all handy for us to use when we get to translating. Now he's going to talk about the differences between the future and the aorist passive. And there again, if you want to look, compare those 2 gray sections. In the future passive, there's no augment. That's because it's not a past tense. Also, the tense formative is theta eta sigma, not simply theta eta. If it helps, you could think of the theta eta as part of the aorist passive stem and the sigma making the necessary alterations to form the future passive, just like the sigma in the future active in middle. You remember back there when we learned the future, the tense formative was sigma. So here again, with the future passive, you've got the sigma tacked onto the end of the theta eta. Okay, next page. The aorist passives use secondary active endings. The future passives use primary passive endings. That's the 3rd difference. And the 4th difference, the 3rd person plural passive form, thesan, is aorist and not future. Okay, if you compare the 2 paradigms, the aorist has thesan in 24.5 and 24.18. The 3rd plural has thesontai, sigma omicron rather than sigma alpha. I don't believe when we see the form, like in the parsing exercises, it's going to present any problem. We can use all these paradigms that he's given us here to help us decide how to parse it. Now he's going to talk in 24:17 about a second future passive. And you have to use a different root or stem because the second future, just like the second aorist was different from the first aorist because it had a different root in the aorist than it did in the present, the lexical form. So apostal is, you can probably see that's from apostello, but the stall is not like the still of the present tense. So that's why it's second future passive rather than first future passive. The stem changed in that tense. Does that make sense to you?
I'm just trying to look at. Yeah, so I don't know that it needs to make any sense. No, I mean, really, I mean, I'm being really honest. I don't know that there's any sense to make out of it. I'm saying is that the point of learning verb forms and what they do in a language, I think, is to be able to recognize them on sight or on hearing.
Right. That
And this
is the
discussion
point, yeah.
isn't helping that much at all.
Okay.
When I'm looking at, like, for example, fortunately, this future passive, that formative in the middle is so different than everything else. Wow, that one really jumps out.
Okay.
Now, some of the others, that's not so easy, but I'm also looking now the second future passive. And it's, I don't think that's that ace is anywhere else. And I have a question. Does
No, I
that
don't-
ace get changed or contracted or lengthened, or does that get modified because of a vowel that's in there somewhere?
No, I
sometimes?
don't think that tense formative gets modified.
Okay,
but-
okay.
If it's a face, it's future passive. If it's ace without the theta, it's just aorist passive. No, wait a minute. No, I got that mixed up. If it's I'm sorry.
I'm just reading this and I don't see a theta.
Yeah.
Okay, the theta is in the aorist, yeah, but there's
Yeah,
no.
theta
it's-
eta.
It's theta eta, not
No, theta eta sigma. Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's ace versus they, right?
That's right. Thais versus they.
Although I'll have to go back and look at the second aorist. I'm sorry, because I
Here
don't,
it is.
where is that?
Theta eta versus
That's
theta
what
eta
I'm
sigma.
Right, but isn't the theta in that actually considered to be part of the formative in that second aorist? I'm not nitpicks, but picking this, but the formative in the second aorist is like graph. There's not a theta. I'm looking at the wrong thing.
If you're going to be looking at that, he arranges things differently there than he does in the book. So that's going to confuse you.
What? I'm hoping second aorist passive is always the same.
See, he's got this as a second last column.
Second
No, wait,
aorist
no.
passive, and he's got it right here in 24.12. The formative is graph. Am I
Yeah, but
doing this wrong?
you're looking at a different verb, which is,
Well, no, it's not the same verb, but I'm just showing you. Okay, isn't that the formative? You gave us right here. Graph. Isn't that the formative?
that's the root.
Oh, that's the root. I'm sorry.
This, the eta,
Is the
without the
formative.
theta, is the
eta
tense
is the
formative.
tense formative. I'm sorry, I'm mixing things up. Thank you.
And I
Right.
think he does that. Yes.
Of course it is.
Yeah, here we go. Second aorist passive, agraphane.
Right. So the formative is just a.
But see, he's got this chart is arranged differently than the one in the book. The one in the book here is right here.
I find this one a lot easier to look at for a number
All
of
right,
reasons.
that's fine.
If I don't know how the arrangement matters, it is what it is. It's the same rules, right?
Yeah.
I'm just looking at it because this one's nicely color coded and they're
I
all
know.
in one
Right,
spot.
so you
I
can-
agree.
They're all
it's
right
easier to
there.
figure out
And I
what
can
is
kind of
what.
look at these and go, what's different between these things that I need to notice? Because Carl, it doesn't make any sense to us.
Okay.
It can't. English doesn't make sense. It's learning to recognize it. That's all we're doing, right?
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, I'm sorry that
That's okay.
I'm saying things in a way that's confusing. I don't intend to do
You're doing
that.
fine. You're doing great.
Um,
Okay.
It is more like you're just presenting it as Mounts wrote it and Mounts wrote it in
Yeah.
a confusing manner.
Okay. Okay,
That's
so
good. That's well put.
now you see that second future passive, 2417. Second future passive is formed just like the first future passive, except that the tense formative, instead of theta, eta, sigma, it's eta, sigma.
Right.
And an example here is with the verb apostello. Apostal is the unaugmented aorist
So-
passive tense stem.
That's not actually always Omicron. It's also sometimes epsilon. Am I reading? No?
What's not always?
No,
on-
I'm sorry, the connecting vowel.
Oh, you're already at the connecting vowel?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just looking at the whole thing and then here's this paradigm, right?
Yeah,
The rule's fairly straightforward the way he presents it, but
yeah.
what's happening in the example?
Well, he's using the verb apostello for one thing. And the root for second future passive is apostal.
Yeah,
It does not have an augment, so it's not aorist. And it has the eta sigma instead of the theta eta sigma, so that's future, second future passive. And then the connecting vowel is omicron with this particular person and number. And my is the first person singular ending. It means I was sent. No, sorry, I will be sent.
so without stating, okay, and again, the one I'm looking at is the third person singular, which has eta, not Omicron, and that seems to
Yeah,
be because epsilon
yeah.
is instead of Omicron.
Mhm.
Because as in the the same thing was true for the endings in the future middle, it seems, we don't use the same connecting vowel. And something happened to the Omicron in the Omicron's not always there.
No, it's either Omicron or epsilon. It changes.
Okay, all right, and that's what I said, because he doesn't show that in the gray box.
He shows the Omicron because
Oh, he does say
first,
connecting vowels, Omicron or epsilon. Yeah, all right. That's all I said. It's Omicron or epsilon.
yeah. All right, now this next page, 269 in the book, I'm going to recommend we don't just omit this. I read through it. It's too technical in my opinion, and it doesn't help. It confuses the issue in my mind. The previous editions of his book didn't have this information. Apparently, grammarians are changing the way they think about middle and passive voices. And this is leaning much more toward, well, I don't know how to say it, but if you don't mind, I'm going back to the way I learned it in the second and third editions of the book. So you can read it if you want to, but I'm pretty sure that if you do read it and try to understand it, it's just going to be a confusion factor.
Is it going to really make a difference in our translations?
No,
Thank
I
you.
don't think so.
Then I'm
From
happy
what
not
you
to read it.
just told us, and from what he says up there in that second sentence in 2419, it sounds like this is frankly more of a warning of, okay, if you keep using Greek over the next decades, you might hear something different said than what
Yeah.
I told you.
I say it's not going to make any difference in the translation that we do. There is one verb, phobeomai, which means I fear, and it's a deponent with the omai ending as the lexical form. But in our vocabulary on page 271 is where he introduces it. You see the second last entry, phobeomai,
Okay,
it means I fear. The sixth form there has a footnote 19. He says the aorist passive is translated as an active. The form is a passive form, but it's translated as an active. That's what we learned in the previous editions as a deponent verb in that tense. Remember, a deponent verb is one that has no active form in that tense, but it has an active meaning and a passive, middle or passive form. So
Okay.
that's all you need to know is that particular verb. If you have it in the second aorist passive, which is what this is, ephabethane, you translate it as an active. But if you think about it, take the meaning of the verb fear.
yeah, I was
Can you make
feared.
that into a passive?
I have to say I was,
I was
A
feared.
lion was feared.
Okay, I see what you, okay,
Who was afraid of the lion?
okay. Yeah, okay. Well, then,
no, it isn't making any, I think you could say the lion was scared. Could be passive. The lion was scared by the,
No,
by,
The hunters.
that's
by
not what
the,
I'm saying.
I don't know what you're saying.
The lion was feared. In other words, the lion was scaring someone or something. Who
yeah,
or what?
But that's.
Who
but
or
that's-
what was
but that's an
fearful of the
active-
lion?
But that's, I'm sorry,
well,
that's not passive though, that's active. The lion's doing the action. In order for it
No.
to be passive,
No, the
It-
lion's not doing the action. The one who's doing the fearing is unidentified.
that hasn't got any sense.
The lion was feared by everyone in the village. Okay?
Okay, you just said it and
Now-
it makes
now I
no
said
sense. No, but you can't have an implied noun that if you state
I
it
see what
is
you're
bad
saying.
grammar.
Yeah,
It's
you're
bad
right.
grammar.
You're right. That's still active.
That verb isn't allowed in
That's
English
still,
at
you're
least to
right. That's
have
still
a
active.
passive
It's
meaning.
just the subject is understood.
You have to pick a different verb to have
Yeah.
a passive meaning in the English, so it's possible in the
I see what you're
Greek it's
saying.
the
Yeah,
same.
I'm wrong and you're
Okay,
right. Yeah, because
okay.
Because
Well,
I'm confusing an
so,
unidentified subject.
yeah, I think that
with,
we can stay with the
Okay.
tried and true, Carl. I think we're
Yeah.
agreeing with you. We don't need this.
okay. Now, let's look briefly at the vocabulary. Ago means I lead, bring, or arrest. Hematos, ta, means blood. We get hematology or something like that from it. Hekastos means each or every. Hemation means a garment or a cloak. Oros, orus means a mountain or a hill. Hupago, now see that that's got looks like a compound, and it is a compound. Hupo means under or below. Ago, I lead. We had that there. But the compound meaning is I depart or I go. He didn't list go, but that's how it's translated a lot of times. I depart or I go.
Mhm.
And then phobeomai, we talked about that. Fear.
I depart, I go, I leave. I mean,
Yeah,
are these not all synonyms?
pretty much so, yeah. I've run into hupago a lot in the translation of John, and it's usually translated in all the translations as he went, or he, not so much he departed, but he just went, or I go. And then Cairo means I rejoice. Right. Now, he's got previous words that, this is an important word here, 24.22. You learned oida in chapter 17. It actually is a perfect that functions as a present. It's pluperfect, which is another past tense, functions as an aorist. So we know that oida means I know. So Adane means he knew or I knew. He doesn't give the full paradigm of the pluperfect, but and I think we might run across that in the exercises. 24:23, peruamai, you remember means I go. There's several verbs translated I go. Urkamai, peruamai, and upago. Peruamai is a deponent verb, but like Cairo in the aorist, it occurs only in the passive and is translated as an active. That's just an oddity about that verb. In the aorist passive, sunago is translated as an active. And then he gives us all this chart of all the verbs that we've learned previously. And he shows us both the aorist passive and the future passive forms of those verbs.
Okay.
So if you're keeping track of all the verbs,
Can I ask about 22?
22,
22. All right. I was sorry.
gather wool.
Yeah, I don't know. So he tells us that we learned oida, and you talked about this, but all right. So again, we are told that it's now a perfect
Yes,
that functions as a present.
yeah.
And did we yet learn the perfect?
No,
No,
that's
see,
the next.
yet again, we get this statement, and then
Yeah.
I don't really know what we're getting. These things are being shown to hear us. I'm sorry. What we're being shown here for first, second, and third singular in the first column is what we would consider to be present tense, which is really perfect. Is that what we're getting here?
Yeah,
And the second column is the pluperfect, which
Yeah.
acts as aorist.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just
okay. Now go
All right.
back in the book to page 178. This is in chapter 17. He gives us that same paradigm there. And he explained, because he's given us oida as a vocabulary word in that chapter. He says there, oida is a different type of word. It's actually another tense, perfect, which is chapter 25, but it functions as if it were a present. And he gives the paradigm.
all right.
Just a brief statement about the perfect tense, which is coming up next chapter. The perfect is a combination of both past action and present condition. The definition of the perfect is an action that has occurred in the past, but whose
And was completed in the past and was effective.
completed in the past, but whose influence is felt in the present time. And sometimes you'll emphasize the past
Right,
aspect of it. Other times you'll emphasize the present aspect of
yeah,
it.
like a great example would be, this building was built in, fill in whatever the year was.
Probably you
Done in
translate
the
it.
past, completed in the past, but the building's still here.
Yeah, you would probably say it more accurately, has been built in the past.
Okay,
But an example I can think of that in the King James English, they translate the perfect tense better, I think, than most modern translations. Remember the verse where it says, Jesus says, I am come that they might have life and have it more abundantly. He says, I am come, not I have come.
Okay,
Well, that gives you the idea that he did come, but he is here now.
Yeah, it's not, well, that's an
The
interesting
newer
statement.
translations say, I have come,
Right. I'm
that they
trying
might
to-
have life and have it more. Hey,
Sorry to borrow.
Sorry, we gotta sneak in here.
Getting.
sneak
Grab
away.
Something.
Okay. So I'm trying to think about what you just said, because that translation, I am come, means that he's in the middle of coming. I mean, he's here, but he's not.
No, if he's in the middle of coming, you'd say, I am coming, not I am
No,
come.
no, let me reword this. I am come
Mhm.
means it's an action that is continuing to be happening in the present.
No, I
Is-
disagree with that. Because
All right, then I don't know what it means.
it,
Okay, I'm sorry, but
I-
theologically, in fact.
no,
he-
neither
when
way.
When he said it, he was in his incarnation on the earth.
Yeah.
He wasn't
was.
done coming, he was still there. If he said it in the past tense, I did come, it means it's over with, right? Jesus
You
Christ.
think of things differently than I do.
No, I don't know why that's different, but the
Well-
concept that the King James does, but by making that present tense means I am come. It's a present tense thing that is happening right now without it, with a beginning that happened in the past. That's what that King James is saying.
Yeah.
But it's not completed yet. It's not yet completed.
Well, he has come,
That's completed.
yeah, but he is still here.
He did come and it's still here.
Yeah.
Would convey the same thing as I am come,
That's right.
right? And that means it's an action that started in the past and isn't done. It's not completed.
But it's different than saying I am coming.
That's predicting something in the future. That's a future statement. I am, well,
That's, remember
I don't know.
when we
Well, I
studied the
am
present
com-
tense?
I am, this
Remember
gets
Dave?
complicated because I am coming mean, I don't know, yeah, it means I'm not yet here. I am coming
Okay.
means I'm not yet
Would you
here.
mind listening to me for a second? In the present tense, when we studied it, that's the first of the tenses. Remember, we talked about aspect. We talked about continuous aspect versus undefined aspect. The difference in that, take the verb come. I come is undefined, right? I am coming is continuous. But I am come is different than that.
We use these words in all kind of ways. I come. No one knows I am coming certainly means that I'm in the process of doing it. It's not done yet. Yeah, it's actively happening.
Right, it's continuous.
If I say I am come, well, it doesn't actually exactly have a strict meaning, but the way I understand it to mean is that I already did get here, but the thing that I'm referring to isn't really completed because there's an aspect to this thing which I'm still in the middle of. So I don't know what's being said about the Greek or how it's being translated. I really don't
Okay.
know what these things mean. And this is, we keep going around and around, but even in the English, I tell me what it means. I come versus I am coming. It's really hard to make an example that actually means something different by those two things. And
Well, I don't
So I-
have the same confusion you do on it, Dave.
well, tell me the difference between
I was trying.
I come to the church. Now, if I mean that's something I do on a regular basis,
Yeah, that's one way to.
that's one way to
consider it, yeah.
understand it.
Yeah.
But
I come to the church every September.
well, now I've added more information.
Yeah,
But in the case you're talking about, Jesus said, I am come. What does that mean to you?
at some time in the past, he came, but he's still here.
But why not just say that? I came. Why wouldn't you just say that?
Well, I
Because
guess
it
if you said I came, that doesn't,
doesn't tell
that
you whether
doesn't
he's still
rule out
here.
the possibility that he came and then departed.
Yeah,
Well,
That's
that
a
could be
different-
If you
true.
say I am come, that eliminates the potential that
that you
he's
departed.
departed.
Yeah,
Well, it does, which is exactly what I'm saying about the aspect of the verb. It's
Okay.
not yet actually completed. He has a
Okay.
mission in that verb, which isn't done yet.
all right, well,
It isn't, and is
I
that
made I
not,
made a blunder by trying to introduce something that
well,
it,
it's all right, but and how do you, now go back to how you describe that for what that Greek means, because I don't know how we use these words very well. So how do you
which verb?
that aspect you're talking about, which was
The
the
perfect.
perfect.
Well, I think it's probably better to wait until next chapter to get into that because he does explain it better. And I was trying to give a preview, which was probably a non-wise thing to do. But we got into this because of that verb oida, which is perfect in form, but present in meaning. All right. That's as much of the chapter as we are given, and now we're ready to start the exercises. But I don't know, are you interested in starting the exercises yet, or wait until next week? Have you had any time to prepare?
I haven't done it.
Okay.
But it's okay. What do you want to
I
do?
didn't assign it yet.
I don't think I'm ready.
Okay. Maybe did you bring your worksheet? I might do one or two with you to kind of get a start on it. We have a little bit of time right now is one reason.
Yeah, I posted it out there. I mean, I don't know.
Oh, you did not bring it then?
It's over there, but I don't know how it, I mean, you're gonna tell us what you're already gonna tell us that you've already told us. It's okay.
You've got a copy of the my
Yeah,
work.
yeah, I posted it.
Okay.
Ray has it. It's online.
All right, number one here. Epistuthemen. The first thing is to figure out what the lexical form is, I believe. That epsilon on the beginning could be either an augment or else it could be part of the prepositional prefix epi. Well, if it was a prepositional prefix, then the root or the stem would be stew. Well, I don't know of any vocabulary word we've had. So it's that epsilon is an augment. Pistu is the stem. Comes from pistuo. Does that make sense to you now? Okay, so the lexical form is pistuo. The augment tells me that it's either imperfect or aorist. And
That's the formative is theta.
theta, yeah.
eta.
The tense formative is theta eta, which,
It has the men ending.
yeah, it doesn't have the theta eta sigma, so it's not future. So that leads me to think it's first aorist, passive.
Right.
And the men ending tells me it's first plural. So first plural, first aorist, passive, indicative of pistuo, we were believed. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Okay, I'll do number 2 and we'll stop with that. Te re thesetai. Can you think of what lexical, what the verb is, the lexical form of the verb?
I'm suspecting that the theta eta sigma in the middle is our tense formative. So the root is
That's right.
probably those first four, which would be te ro, maybe
Te reo,
reo.
yeah, that's a contract verb, an epsilon contract. Te reo means he, she, or it will keep, or he, she, or it keeps. Oh, excuse me. Te reo means I keep. I'm sorry, but the face, you're correct, Drew, is the tense formative for future passive, first future passive. And the ending, tie, is third singular. The epsilon is the connecting vowel. So te reo, lexical form. Thais is first future passive, and it's third singular, meaning he, she, or it will be kept.
I want to ask a question. I want to ask a question about one.
All right.
Looking at that, if I went to the first aorist active, right, instead of the passive,
Okay.
it would be translated how? Just
He,
change
she,
that.
or it will keep. Not,
No,
The fir-
believe,
The first one.
oh, the first one.
believe.
We will believe. No, we did believe, or we
We
believed.
believed.
Yeah. But instead
We
it's
believed.
passive. We were believed.
And if it were the middle voice,
Okay. We believed for ourselves, or we believed for our own benefit, if you want to give the reflexive or the,
I'm okay. Now I'm just trying to follow this, and what I realized here is there's a very important shift here that is important in this use of the passive voice, right?
okay.
There's a big
what-
difference between we believed and we
We were
were believed.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
there is.
Entirely, it's not passive about me. Yeah, it's someone else believed. They believe. The whole thing changed.
Yeah,
Who's doing the believing
Okay,
changed.
we were believed by somebody.
Sure, but it completely changes who does the believing.
That's right. The
Well, that's
The
the
subject
same
is
thing that I
being
was saying,
acted
like
on.
earlier with the lion was feared. We were believed the lion was feared.
Well, okay. Yes, okay. Don't bring, that's a different thing, and it's not helpful.
let's stick to the
Okay.
verb believe.
So, okay, so I'm just letting that settle in, because that's a very important shift in what this passive meaning is. We've talked
Yeah.
about it in some theoretical ways, but this is really significant. And I'm looking at how the English operates too. I'm just trying to let
Yeah.
that settle in. I mean, did everybody else automatically recognize that? I was just looking at it and going, that's interesting.
Yeah, remember when he gave us this, that exegetical insight about,
Well, because with those other verbs, it doesn't necessarily work that way. Right? I
the
mean,
passive versus the active?
yeah, let me think of this.
Take a
We
different
were
verb.
shot.
Okay,
We were injured.
okay.
Uh,
We-
It's the same problem. I injured I was injured,
Yeah.
but it's still me receiving action.
Yeah, we
You see, that's-
received the action verb.
But still, but in this case, no, I injured. That's very interesting. So I'm just putting these
I'm
things
doing
together.
the injuring.
We use helping verbs to make this
Yeah,
shift.
we do.
So I injured, I was injured. Now
Yeah.
that one's kind of flipping it around because the action was on I injured, I did the action.
Right.
I believed the action's actually me that's receiving it. It's just kind of a backwards than way we think about
Yeah.
most verbs because it's an internal thing. I'm doing the believing. But all right, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I just
no,
wanted to
that's
point
good.
that out.
We need to have a clear grasp of active versus passive.
This really is an important shift in what's going on because
Right.
in English, we use these helping verbs. And sometimes it's not very subtle what it does. It's a radical change.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I injured you. I was injured by you,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
I was injured without stating. how it
whenever you
happened.
use a passive voice, the subject is being acted upon by somebody, and it's not usually stated, or it's not always stated, I should say. I was hurt. Well, who hurt
Well,
me?
I think what got my attention on this is that this is the passive voice, but it's really not the way we normally talk about it because in this case, it's actually not even about me. And we were believed. This is really odd. Passive. This aspect puts it into the other ones. I mean, it was out of my hands completely.
Yeah,
We were believed. We said something and we were believed. Yes, it's passive in the sense that I didn't cause it to happen. But I mean, we normally think of passive like I did something. But this verb isn't even me acting.
no,
Or I'm not even actually sort of involved in the verb. It's kind of odd.
yeah, it's done to me.
Well, in this case, it's not even done to me.
Which case?
We were
Where-
believed. I mean, yeah, somewhere in there I was doing something, but I'm not even actually sort of involved in this verb at all, which is what really caught my attention.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah, these are good
Alright.
things to understand and get a grasp of. So can you take it from there next week and we'll do,
Well, all right. Yeah, I'm sorry if I stopped you.
no, we don't need to do any more together, I don't think. You get the point, I guess. And use the paradigms that he's given us if you need to. And then let's assign for next week the first page as a minimum. If you want to go farther, fine. That'd be all of the parsing and all the warm up. Oh, I know something I wanted to share with you guys. Let me do one more of the warm-ups and we have about 15 minutes. This is something that is strange to me, but it occurs not only in this exercise epsilon in the warm-up, but it occurs other places. This entuta edoxathe ha patermu. It's from John 15:8. And John 15:8 says, in this is my Father glorified that you bear much fruit. We talked about that Tuesday, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, entuta, that means in this or in this thing. Edoxasthe, well, there's the theta eta tense formative. Doxazo is the lexical form. I glorify. doxazo. Now the zeta is changed to a sigma in this tense. It's first aorist, passive, indicative, third singular. See the augment, doxaste.
They, it's,
Okay, was glorified. He, she, or it was glorified. So in
Right.
this was glorified the Father of me. In this was glorified. Well, if you look at the translations that we've got, they don't say was glorified, they say is glorified. Now that's strange to me.
I'm sorry, what's it referencing? I don't remember
In John 15,
Yeah.
I am the vine, you're the branches, remember that?
yeah.
And this is my Father, in this is my
Was-
Father glorified,
was my
that you
fa-
bear much
yeah,
fruit.
So was my Father glorified?
Yeah.
So why is it? that
Why is it
aspect?
was?
Yeah,
No,
why
that's,
isn't it
it's an
active?
aorist. Why isn't it present?
Yeah, why isn't it act? Yeah, why isn't it present tense?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, you have a similar thing in several other verses where a voice came from heaven. This is my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased. Remember that?
Mhm.
That occurs in 4 places. 1, 2, 3. No, 5 places. Matthew 3:17, 17:5, Mark 1:11, Luke 3:22, and 2 Peter 1:17. They all are translated in every translation I've checked. In this is my Father glorified. No. I'm sorry. In him I am well pleased, or in whom I'm well
I
pleased.
was well pleased, you're saying.
Yeah,
it's the action.
and it's, in every case, it's the first aorist. I was well pleased. It's not passive,
So
but
what's the explanation?
the explanation is that verb eudokeo, which means well pleased, found delight in, or something like that. I've seen it translated in whom I have found delight. But if you use the wording of the translations, in whom I am well pleased, and you try to give it the aorist tense, you would naturally say in whom I was well pleased. Well, that implies that he might not be
pleased
pleased
anymore.
anymore, but you can't assume that.
No, that would be a bad assumption,
It
but
would be a
what's the point of putting it in past tense? I mean,
I don't know why the Greeks did that,
well,
but that's the way it appears in all those verses.
where's the, so there, I'm just trying to, where am I? There is a present tense form for that verb, I assume.
Oh, yes, eudokeo. But this is
So-
eudokesa, which
You
is
know-
first aorist.
And I don't know if there's anything else in scripture that's like this. Is it just this verb? Or is he saying something else to us? Like, is he making a statement that this was the plan and it gave him glory to plan this?
Possibly,
It gave him glory in the past.
but it still
this was
does.
happening. Well, it just doesn't rule out that it does. It's just,
Yeah.
is this pointing something out to us that we're missing when we translate it is?
I think your idea it has merit, Dave, because in eternity past, we have a few places in scripture
Yeah.
where there's reference to things that happened in eternity past, such as we were chosen in him before the foundation of the world
Because it pleased him.
because it pleased him. Yeah.
It doesn't mean he
So-
doesn't now.
No, it doesn't mean, it doesn't mean that.
Yeah.
But it's possible that could be the point of why it's in the aorist.
Yeah, then this goes back to something that I said probably a year ago, that one of the big issues we have with trying to describe anything that relates to eternity with verbs is that they inherently have a reference to time, which is
Yeah.
irrelevant to eternity.
Yeah, yeah. He's beyond
And
it.
that might be an argument right there for using the aorist, where you're saying that time isn't really significant.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, he speaks of our, I mean, I'm just putting it with this. In a place he speaks of our, we have been justified, we have been glorified.
Yeah, there you
We have
go.
been justified, sanctified,
haven't-
and glorified, past tense, it's aorist.
Yeah, we haven't yet been glorified.
Okay, but he's done it.
Yeah,
Is God not already there? He is. Is God not still in the past? Yes, he is.
yeah. He's the
So is
I
he just
am.
stating to us that this was the Father's plan long ago and he glorified him then? Well, I mean, is that all that he's telling us?
It could be. Remember, the aorist is an undefined aspect. It doesn't tell us when, it doesn't tell us any additional information about the action other than that it happened.
Right. No timestamp reference.
Yeah.
if you will.
Okay, so the action happened, but it is without time.
Yeah, I think
It's
that's,
unimportant. to
that might be a
Right.
good
So
way to
it's
say
really
it.
not a past tense. It just simply means
But
that
it's,
the thing took place.
yeah, it's
or took
presented
place,
in,
or is taking place, or is taking place in the future. It's completed though, or
yeah.
it's
There
completed.
These
is
things that-
maybe completed action, but ongoing effect.
Well, okay,
No,
but
that's
that's
the
not,
perfect tense.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's like,
this is simple, so it's like it's an action that somehow is complete. I mean, I don't mean that it doesn't have effects, but let's not get too complicated.
Yeah.
but it's a discrete action.
Perhaps. I don't know.
In this case, I think it would be.
Okay, well, this is important to understand then. And so some of these things, the difficulty then with scripture is we could be looking at a very significant statement about, or maybe it's just the fact that the aorist doesn't specify when he's glorified because he's always glorified. And so don't say when. And where other places, the natural flow of events makes it a past tense statement most of the time. And here they want to make it is because it's the simplest way to put it in English.
Well, also,
present
also
tense.
it may be putting it in present in this instance because of the fact that it's essentially a direct quote of a conversation of how did he say it at the time it was said.
Oh, I see. You're
Well,
talking about,
yes, because in the simple, we don't have an aorist, so there's no way to make that statement. And the closest thing to making the statement is to fit with the context, the rest of the conversation and the statement he's making, which is all present tense, right?
Right.
The rest of
right.
that stuff in there is present tense. You are the vine, the branches,
this-
I am the vine. Are those all present
Right.
tense?
yeah.
So if we
You're
do
talking
something
about
else, it's
John
weird.
15. one.
Right, that's all right. I think we're both saying the same thing in
Yeah.
different ways.
Okay, yeah,
Okay. All I'm trying to point out here is that it's presented to us in scripture as an aorist, but
it's translated in this
it's
way.
translated often
Well,
as a
thank
present
you. I
tense,
really-
which makes a lot of sense.
This really helps me understand the aorist. I'm really more appreciative of the
Does it?
fact. Yeah, I appreciate the fact that it really isn't simply a past tense. Most places it's used, that's probably the best way to translate it. But really it means something a little different, and then we have to look at what's the most reasonable way to translate this, because we're not gonna say something strange. I mean, and by this, my father was, is, and always will be glorified. Well, he did, that's adding a lot of words that probably we shouldn't do.
No, but consider the name Jehovah, God,
Mhm.
from Exodus, when Moses was at the burning bush. Who shall I say sent me? I am who I am,
Yeah,
which is
okay.
a form of the Hebrew verb to be.
Right.
And Jesus
So in the,
made quite a few I am
in
statements.
what tense is that in?
Well, I don't know the Hebrew
No,
tenses.
the Greek tense. that we
Oh.
have.
Ego.
Ego eimi haon.
Yeah.
I am the one being, the one who is. Anyway.
Okay.
But Jesus made quite a few I am statements which are equivalent to the name Jehovah. And one
Okay.
of those statements before Abraham was I am.
Yes.
Now
But
that's
this is-
significant because
Yeah,
the time element is.
Yeah, it is,
key.
but he makes that in present tense, right? Is
Yes,
that's a present tense, not an
Well,
aorist.
it's got both a present and an if. Before Abraham was,
No, that was aorist, but actually it's not was, that was actually before Abraham began, or was. When
It's-
you would say
it's
born.
again until I believe
which
before
is like
Abraham
before started or
became
became.
I am.
And that's aorist?
Again until I believe it is, yeah.
Because, and he doesn't need to use, because the other option would have been the, what, the imperfect? So he doesn't use the imperfect, so no, he uses the aorist because that's simply what they typically do for a completed action.
I think that's John 8:58.
It's an odd language. So. All
that's why
right,
it's for it.
Oh. Oh my goodness, this complicates it even more.
uh-oh,
Before Abraham was is the translation of actually an infinitive, genesthai.
okay. it's not
Before
even-
Abraham to be, I am.
Okay.
It wasn't genitive.
Okay, all right.
So I think what we can say about all of these things is that God is beyond time. And sometimes our attempts to describe what's being said using a language that's locked into time, we get kind of.
Yeah, it's
We
always
do,
gonna
it's
be an
hard.
imperfect representation.
And we do our best and we look at the concepts, but it's very clear that in some of these statements, the Jews knew what he was saying because they wanted to stone him.
Oh, yeah.
And they knew he was claiming to be divine, that he
God,
was
right.
God, equivalent with God, son of God. They knew all this, and this is why they wanted to stone him.
Yeah.
Why they want to get rid of him. So it's not just our interpretation, it says it says.
Yeah, actually, that validates our interpretation.
Exactly, yeah.
All right, well, we've used up our time and I
All right.
think we've explored a few important things.
So,
We have lots of cans of worms.
so we should do as much of the problems as we can, but we'll go through at least the
The
first
first
page.
page, yeah.
All right, good enough. Do you wanna say goodnight? Oh,
Okay, good night, everyone.
all right.